I'm Molly Cheshire, and welcome to Meetings with Remarkable People. Tonight's guest is Nico Haupt, and he founded the 9/11 Truth movement. This is true, correct?
I wouldn't say it that way. I was experimenting at that time with some, I call it PR stunts. So I created the term 9M skeptics, which at that time I had no better word. Nowadays I wouldn't use that word, so I called the 9M skeptics movement. But that was just a PR stunt, and at that time I was more naive.
What year was this?
It was at the end of 2001. Actually, it was in the same week after 9/11. I figured immediately this doesn't add up. I didn't believe in Bin Laden. I didn't believe that this came down. The towers came just down by itself. There was even one.
What made you not believe in Bin Laden, and what was the thing that sort of like set up the red flags?
Well, it's 5 years away, and it's different from what I thought that day. I think triggered me than I'm thinking now triggered me.
Right.
So I have to distinguish between I really thought. These are
I
two
mean,
different
I realize
mindsets.
that it's evolved.
Okay, so it evolved. On that morning, I just didn't believe that it was just sloppery or something like that, which they later called negligence, because I heard on the same day there was actually pending warnings, and that they shut down air bases. So it looked for me a little bit more serious than just a regular screw-up. I didn't believe in the Bin Laden story because it just didn't fit that way on that morning. I had the feeling it was someone else. But the someone else over the day itself was then also somehow linked to the US government itself. Sometimes you have in mind, okay, maybe an additional government. So I was thinking a combination maybe with Israel or something like that. I saw the towers come, when the towers came down, I thought it's a controlled demolition to protect lives. I didn't even know how controlled demolition worked, but I saw many before. When I figured there was no evacuation, I thought, wait a second, that looks like foul play or bandwagon. So I was actually the apologist more for the government on that day than later, because I always thought maybe someone else from the inside tricking out the US government, and the US government is actually now bandwagoning on it.
Right.
So I thought the controlled demolition is a bandwagon, and I was thinking on that morning, oh, they just installed the bombs now to start a war. I didn't know it takes at least 24 to 78 hours on a conventional level.
Right.
Meanwhile, we're talking about exotic weaponry, direct energy weapon. But that was also in that context a possibility. So then I saw a replay. They call it actually exclusive footage from the second hit on the tower, where alleged commercial aircraft hit the second tower. And when I saw this footage, I thought, no, that's not a real footage. I work at TV. I work with computer tricks. So this is a re-dramatization. In my mind, I called it a re-dramatization because I thought that actually on that morning there was a real aircraft hitting the towers. Later I backed up from that, and I thought it was a remote-controlled object. And later then I backed up and reminded myself to that film I saw and thought, no, much easier than to use remote-controlled aviation is a TV fakery. And that's how my reputation more or less started crumbling, because people didn't believe that they used a very simple special effect on that morning.
But you don't think, I mean, for example, eyewitnesses saw something hit the tower. You think that it just exploded and then they associated that?
I think about different combinations of, you can manipulate eyewitnesses very easily. Think about, you see a car accident, after a while one guy will claim the car was red, the other one's black. Car will vanish. Then you have the Stockholm Syndrome. Stockholm Syndrome is basically if you somehow participate, have a kind of guilt complex, so you feel guilty that you haven't been around. So you make up in your mind that you were actually there. So you're saying, oh yes, I saw the plane. But you don't pretend you're lying because you later have the cover, you saw the plane on TV. So I think 60–80% under the influence of Stockholm Syndrome felt with the victims and constructed the story. Then you have the liars, then you have the actors. We found actors and liars. But then, on a scientific level, you have the contradictions within the eyewitnesses' reports. Then you have the footage which doesn't show any planes at all at the same time of the hit. If I take all this together, I cannot say eyewitness reports are serious at all. Then you have the forensic evidence, which shows clearly the hole was too small for bowing like this. But then you have the TV fakery. So TV fakery is basically a subset for all this. And if you just focus on that, then you have to address the media, and the media is criminal. And why are people covering that up? Because the people who infiltrate this movement are connected close to the media. That explains why Loose Change became basically fair play on CNN, Fox and TV. And that explains why people like me are never on mainstream TV, because then they would talk about the real details of no planes, what they try to ridicule, which has nothing to do with the forensic evidence.
But we're just saying, I want to back up, because you're saying that they allowed Loose Change to be viewed because it supported...
It's a co-op limited hangout version, so they have Stephen Jones on it because Stephen Jones is already a cover-up artist on direct energy weaponry research. He was involved in own exotic weaponry production or research like sonoluminescence. He covered up in 1989.
What exactly is sonoluminescence?
Well, sonoluminescence is a kind of plasma physics crossover technology where I'm not firm to the latest details. But you can look it up that he was involved. So I'm just saying as a pattern.
Right.
He was with sonoluminescence. He was with cold fusion research and covered up as a potential chance for free energy system. So on behalf of the Department of Energy, he covered that up in 1989, and we know now that they use that possibly also for weaponry in China and Japan. Then he was involved in neutrino weaponry research at the KEK in Japan.
And what exactly is neutrino weapon?
Well, theoretically, it says that it somehow neutralize or destroy nuclear weapons. I'm sure there's a better definition for that.
So it neutralizes nuclear weapons?
Well, that's what the definition says. I'm sure it's a very complex...
But does it work?
They tested it in accelerators twice in the years 98, 99. Since then, I'm not 100% sure if they had newer tests, but I'm aware of another test at the Fermi Lab in Chicago. Chicago was competing actually with Tokyo. No, I think somewhere in Japan, Osaka. So there are only two official laboratories worldwide working on neutrino weaponry. Jones is connected to all this, and still it's not a problem for the UnTruth movement to address these issues, because they think that the people speaking out on that, they are already ridiculed over the last 3 years to criticizing the movement at all, to using TB fakery as a point to discredit the official story, which they don't like.
Well, just say, how do you know that Stephen Jones is with the CIA or an infiltrator? I mean, what are sort of the telltale signs?
I'm not using the word CIA.
No, okay.
I'm saying he was connected with Los Alamos and with the Department of Energy, and he's involved in the cover-up of unconventional weaponry, including direct energy. If you see all this, and he's basically perped into all this, then you could argue he's dupe on the highest level of US intelligence. I don't think it's CIA then, I think it's then military defense intelligence. It could be also privatized intelligence. It could be that he works already for Asia or China, so he works as a double agent. He could be brainwashed into this.
Wait, he killed cold fusion. I mean, is there any evidence that he actually killed
Yes,
cold
there's
fusion?
a video, you can look it up on YouTube. He was criticized then from a cold fusion supporter who was later assassinated, actually, 2 years later. And the official story is there was a robbery in his place. So they're very suspicious things.
And nobody in the 9/11 Truth movement has even examined any of this?
A lot of people are supportive of that research, just they don't get the floor. So we have, we're doing video mashups where people basically see what the so-called UnTruth movement is suppressing. The most popular portal, most people don't know that, 9blogger.com, is actually run by...
just 911blogger.com.
Yeah, it's partly run by intellectual property attorney. His real name is Dane Alexander Flom. I know him because he was working in my group at the end of 2005, 2006, when we started working already with Jimmy Walter, and he was opposed also in the beginning. No one didn't want to talk about controlled demolition, the conventional evidence. Why? Because the people who run the movement, I linked them to Quintilpro. So you have 9truth.org, where David Kubiak didn't want to talk about controlled demolition for 3 years.
Wow,
Same
3
his
years.
handlers, his dupes like Nick Levis, who infiltrate my street activist group, New York named Truth.org. And then they brought Les Jameson, who is himself brainwashed or duped by a pseudo-religious cult called UnTruth, which itself was created with the fundings of the OSS and later the CIA and the NSA.
They were founded by
They were created with the help of the OSS in the 50s and with the help of Tavistock, by the way. OSS was the predecessor of the CIA.
Yes,
So
my
you have
uncle used
U.S.
to be
intelligence group creating cults.
My uncle used to be with the OSS.
Well, yeah, well, everyone is somehow created with the military. What I'm saying is that particular cults get created to brainwash and conditioning people into particular attitude. So
Do you
this
think it's really possible to do the Manchurian Candidate?
I'm thinking you don't need more than just some basic formulas. I don't believe in the MQ concept, by the way. I think
You don't think that that's true?
Well, I experienced. I told in 2006. I told my best friends, listen, we are not the victims. We finally figured out we are in a cult. And how did they do that? They just used particular formulas to brainwash the people. Like they talk about unanswered questions, or the people are not ready for the truth. And all of a sudden you see the same slogans, the same reps from other people. You see how the followers following the leaders and talking the same dribble without thinking what they're actually talking about. These people are not able to talk outside the box. You could argue that some of them already got conditioned before they came to the 9/11 movement.
But we're all conditioned.
Yeah, so I'm a little bit cynical. I blame more the left wing than the right wing. Just traditionally because they already got scammed by a Green Revolution scam of Club of Rome.
Oh, I don't think that there's any, I think the right wing and the left wing, everybody's brainwashed.
Well, okay, let's
Conditioned, shall we say.
agree on that they're both conditioned. So we call in the cartoon language the flag wavers on the right side and the truth links on the left side.
Mm-hmm.
Both had been merged and also over the years, so we call them all the truth links, whatever side they represent. We call the people the spooks where we think that they're actually co-opting truth much more radically, even if we cannot prove that they're spooks. But just look at the
by
top.
demonizing people, then it's easy to brainwash people.
Exactly. Just look at the top and see the background. And
Spook
you
is a CIA.
Well, I don't use the word CIA because I think that this agency is already a distraction from much more important agencies like the NRO, the NSA, and the NGA.
I'm using CIA very loosely, but spooks are sort of people that are operating covertly.
That's right, but in my research I figured out that using CIA very loosely is part of the cover-up concept. So they're giving you the CIA, FBI immediately on the platter and saying both messed up.
So you think that there's a secret government?
I don't call it the secret government. I call it
not so secret government.
I call it the private military industry, which is absolutely not secret at all. You can look them up. Meanwhile, you have maybe 1,000 to 2,000 companies. When I started, I had 500. 100 of them are linked already to 9/11 as potential suspect. If you look at the big four aviation players, it's clearly for me that they got involved, which is Boeing, it's Raytheon, Lockheed, and TRW. These four major conglomerates produced somehow 9/11. You cannot say particular who inside these private military contractors, but I'm pretty sure they worked on behalf of some cover-up procedures, like they're telling them there's a pending terror threat.
Right.
That's why they had all these terror drills and war games in advance, so that they had that later as a cover.
I mean, drills to me just are so scary because they could go live just like that.
Well, that's exactly what they did. Just with one of the infiltrators or saboteurs in the movement, they had a perfect diversion. So we had Mike Rupert, who actually diverted the movement into the so-called health.
I'm sorry, what was that again?
Mike Rupert.
Oh, Mike Rupert.
When he showed up, the purpose had to make sure that he's doing his diversion very, very perfect. So he put not only disinfo in this movement, he also created the whole myth that Cheney did 9/11, which is a complete nonsense. Because if you read his book carefully, there's no evidence linking Cheney to anything at all that morning. He was just.
What about the stand-down order, or the order not to stand down?
Well, the stand-down order is actually linked to a research which was already done in 2001, Jared Israel, and the stand-down order basically presents also limited hangout. It was that they used the war games on that day to distract from the terror drills. That's why Mike Rupert is blurring down my research.
And the terror drills, just for anyone who doesn't know.
Well, the terror drills were the actual was the actual event. It was hijacking a plane
I see.
and crashing it to a particular building, which they didn't do. They used TV fakery to do that. So there was no plane Pentagon, no plane Shanksville, and no commercial aircraft.
Well,
also
I mean, no planes meaning a missile probably hit the Pentagon.
so far, I reduced my formula to the North Star was obviously hit by some military device disguised as a plane, while the TV fakery on the South Star, we clearly cannot say what at all hit, so I'm calling it nothing plus X. Until I not know what X is, it could be nothing.
I mean,
because nothing means they just used the TV fakery as a cover and then could have had internal explosives or the futuristic weapon they used. So we can also rule in, again, direct energy weapon to make that hole in that particular size. We don't know all this.
I mean, what to me is very suspicious about the Pentagon is they confiscated every single security tape, and we saw one fuzzy tape.
To make it more interesting, because the major cover-up scenarios are actually destruction of Twin Towers and the TV fakery. That's the only thing you cannot read in mainstream press or you don't get on Fox TV and CNN. If they sometimes try to ridicule the TV fakery evidence, they call it no planes. No planes is just another subset of the evidence. They never give you the details on TV. Even when they mention me in Washington Post, they just say that's a guy who said nothing at the towers. But
Wait, who at the Washington Post?
Well, they did that during anniversary 2006. Basically, maybe they tried to credit me and then discredit me at the same time. So they mentioned actually my name and the they just said that's a guy who said nothing at the towers. But
Wait, who at the Washington Post?
Well, they did that during anniversary 2006. Basically, maybe they tried to credit me and then discredit me at the same time. So they mentioned actually my name and the research in TV fakery, but they didn't use the word TV fakery. So they're still using just the word no planes.
No planes.
Or ridicule the people by saying, oh, these people believe no planes at the towers. If you hear that sentence, and it's completely out of context, because you cannot prove that there are contradictive flight paths, that there were only 2 or 4 live feeds, that the object itself changing their style, their speed.
So something hit something might have hit the tag.
As I said, if it comes to TV fakery, you have to focus and you have to show the people what exactly was faked, and then you can figure out in the second phase what hit instead.
Right.
But since I want to prove TV fakery, I don't need that anymore because I know already 767s cannot hit the building. It was not a commercial aircraft. It was probably no aircraft at all. So I don't go from.
But it was something that was in the air flying.
As I said, it's a speculation. I'm speculating as much as the people who oppose us that there was no fakery, because we can prove that they faked the live feed. It's no doubt about it.
Oh, I worked in TV. We do plausibly live.
And it was very simple. It was 2-dimensional. Trust me on that. They used military camera system called VSCAM, which VSCAM.
Yeah.
If you zoom into the object, you see precise details. So that they zoomed in and still no details, just a black silhouette. Why? Because it was a black 2-dimensional CGI silhouette. There was nothing else. So not even 3-dimensional. Very simple 2D. That's the same what they're doing in baseball games. It's just fading in some font letters.
Right.
It's not much bandwidth to lose, and in 2001 technology was ready for that. Meanwhile, you can use total immersion, 3-dimensional objects moving around. If they would have done 9/11 nowadays, maybe they would have used a professional aircraft looking. But my theory is they knew already from the beginning they would even mess up that. So they simplified actually the aircraft silhouette. So they used simple 2-dimensional black silhouettes because they knew they would later have to prove it, and then they cannot show the same windows from the same angle anymore. But if it's black, then it's easy. So we have 23 footage where they try to improve it. Not live, but they tried. And it always looks different. Anyway, that's just the TV fakery. As I said, one main reason why I'm coming to show is that this movement was infiltrated by a New Age spiritual activist already linked over Rudolf Steiner cultists or whatever spiritual sect and cult, name it. It was here in the movement. Partly linked to Club of Rome. In 2004, there was
what exactly is the Club of Rome?
Club of Rome was an institute created with the help of oil industry, energy, who pretended in the 60s that we're running out of oil resources, that we have a population control problem, and we have to reduce all this. I call them also a psyop think tank, because they manipulate more or less the left wing.
What would be
psyop, psychological operation? Subconsciously, you think there's some truth in something when you can prove that it's actually the opposite. But it works subconsciously.
Right.
Once you tell me people running out of oil, they think, oh, maybe war is a good thing. That's how you create limited hangouts. So the left wing will actually not say 9/11 was an inside job, because they maybe secretly hope the United States win in Iraq, and maybe there's really Al Qaeda in Africa because we're running out of oil. So don't tell them the complete truth. Just tell them a little bit that war is bad. That's why the anti-war movement is much more hypocritical than any other movement. That's why I call them the pro-war movement. And I don't
run
want
that by me again.
I don't want to become apologist for them. I'm just saying, if the good people in the anti-war movement actually finally realize that 9/11 was false flag, plus tea fakery, plus the anti-weaponry evidence and the infiltration, why are they not standing up then against these anti-war leaders and say, you guys have to go? There is no way anymore for you to stay if you continue covering up evidence and I'm false flag. Plus, now it's even more criminal. They're covering up the evidence on the weaponry systems, which will turn this war into a never-ending war. So they're double plus Orwellian thinkers now. They creating war where they easily could say in front of a microphone, let's go to White House right now and get them out.
It
These
seems
scenarios,
difficult. No, but it seems difficult because I think that both elections are probably rigged.
Mhm.
So voting them out doesn't seem to be working.
No, I'm not talking about voting. I'm talking about conventional protest. And if you see people 200,000 misleading, but people who know exactly what they're covering up, I call them war criminals. So I'm saying openly into the camera right now, Leslie Kagan, I'm saying since 2 years, belongs to jail, in the same jail as
Who is Leslie Kagan?
Leslie Kagan is one of the founders or runners of Arms International. I accuse Arms International since 2 years as war criminals. I'm doing the same as Unite for Peace.
But what exactly did he do?
They're not talking about the evidence of 9/11 false flag. They're not talking about the scientific evidence, how the towers came down. So they're covering up basically a crime and participating in the cover-up of new crimes, which is the war on terror. They're using a limited hangout phrase like bring the troops home, because that's much easier than to say the US government or the associated private military contractors did 9/11. Why? Because they're infiltrators also. So that's why I call Leslie Kagan a war criminal.
All right, so in our last couple of minutes, what can we do? I mean, you basically suggest mass demonstration. That's one way. People
have to completely think outside of the box. If they think that's the end of the box, the real box. So they have to think again outside the box. What we need is a complete paradigm change. We have to figure out that there is no real opposition worldwide. So there has to be some kind of revolutionary process which opposed the idea of leaderships at all. No centralized movement anymore, decentralized. That means you have to oppose the civil rights movement leaders, the human rights movement, the anti-war movement leaders, and the 9/11 movement leaders, because they're all working for the enemy. And that's not just some dramatization I just made up. I'm talking about this in detail since 2-3 years.
I mean, are you
I'm
saying...
calling this the biggest fraud since 2,000 years. And if people will not stop this big mass of fake opposition, then we will have no human species anymore. There will be a transition into controlled new robotic species. And the war of the future will be between artificial species. So, and then we have a right to fight if that will be open source or closed source.
There's a theory that we're already artificial species.
Well, there's a theory of a lot of things. I'm just thinking...
well, anyway, but let's get back to something
it's
concrete.
a red herring. It's not about the metal chip. It's about getting the brain into the chip.
So basically, we have to think our way out of this. I mean, I sort of feel that thinking out of the box, I mean, the intellect can only take you so far.
Well, the intellect brought me so far to what I am, and not alone. So we have hundreds and thousands of people who actually understand what I'm talking about and other people talking about.
So what can people do? Because, I mean...
It's not a language barrier, it's not a lack of language, it's really a limited hangout of people. They don't want to change anything.
So basically, we have to change.
It's a paradigm change. It's much more than just a change. It has nothing to do with democracy anymore. This is the fight on the last inches already, on the survival of human species.
So in the last 2 minutes that we have, what can we do because I get very overwhelmed by a lot of this information because it seems kind of
depressing. Speak out against the phony leaders. Don't let them replace us other phony leaders. Just get the message more into the white. Said we don't need David Griffin. He's a cultist. We don't need Stephen E. Jones. He's a multiple trader.
How do you know what really is the truth?
Go by science. These towers didn't come down with conventional weaponry. It must have been some exotic weaponry of some kind, and direct energy weaponry is a good suspect.
So science is a good basis. I mean, real science.
Sure, and they try to shop science. You know, there's one politician right now, I think Henry Waxman, who proved that since 9/11 they try to change other scientific laws. So in maybe if we go that direction, we will have no real scientific laws anymore in the future. People will forget what they learned in 1900, 1950. They will then go with the 9/11 science and will claim steel gets melted by this and that. So that's
well, most people really aren't very scientific.
People believe that the Earth was flat. I'm calling them.
But what I'm saying is that
society.
My experience is that even scientists do not behave in a scientific fashion. I mean, they become irrational. They get emotionally attached to certain.
Or got corrupted.
No, but they get attached to certain concepts.
That's right.
You know, you get security from believing in something, and then when the science starts to disprove that, they're not willing to let go of whatever they believed in because they're.
Well, neocons created the Campus Watch right in October 2001 to make sure that no professor speaks out. That's why it was so complicated to get in touch with these professors for 3 years. I created my own group basically from students or ex-professors or science specialists. I had them from all over the place of the world, and we got the word out for 3 years and got opposed. Same people running a movement right now who claim that they finally bring out the truth, but blocking the truth on the conventional evidence of controlled demolition. Now they're blocking the evidence on the unconventional part. You cannot trust these people. They're not our friends. You have to think out of the box and
do your own research too.
Do your own research. You don't need leaders for that. They just.
I mean, the internet
giving
is
you the Orwellian version of what you have to put on your leaflet. And so I think.
I mean, when you're doing research, I mean, how do you discern what's truthful and what's not? Let's say you haven't taken any science classes. I mean, what sort of
we go by logic. As I said, most of the stuff you can prove logically. You can logically prove there was a fake plane on the air. You can logically prove that the tower couldn't have come down with conventional explosives, or at least against a flag waiver level, it couldn't have come down just by the fire. NIST itself, the institute who analyzes, contradict each other themselves. They changed their official version 3 times in 5 years. That's another logical element to say, if NIST changed their official version 5 times, why is it not that this movement doesn't want to talk about unconventional weaponry?
Okay. I just want to say thank you very much, Nico, for joining us, and I'm Molly Cheshire. It's Meetings with Remarkable People, and good night.